Shabbat Shalom. My name is Noel. This is the Unexpected Cosmology. Hopefully my internet is good for you guys tonight. It seems a little bit slow on my end, but let me know in the comment section if it's not working for you. It's great to see everybody here. I show up and I get ready to go live, and everyone's already commenting, saying Shabbat Shalom. That's my favorite thing every week when I see the community get together and doing that. And you can see here I put Rebecca's comment in here. Shalom, everybody. Hope other people see this video by hitting the like button or sharing it. It's an algorithm thingy. So very good advice, Rebecca. Let's see here. Throwing a couple other comments before we get going. Longest minute of my day by Polly Hearts. He's referring to like 1 minute ago. It was like 8:59 or so. And I love you, Polly. Polly is he's become a staple in my life. He was probably one of the first couple flat earthists I ever met way back in the day. And yeah, so I love having Polly in my life. I always need more Polly. And let's get started. So we are in, can you believe it, week 9 of BARASHAYATH, of the Paleo Hebrew, our Torah portions. And of course, we're mixing a lot of other content into this. And I was telling my group before we got started, I invite everybody every week. You come over to Discord, open mic nights. If you want to sing or dance for us, whatever, recite a poem, I don't know, but we go in there and we talk about, just shoot the breeze, get to know everybody. And I was confessing to the group that, the last 2 or 3 Torah portions of Genesis are not my favorite. I mean, in the greater scope of the book. And these Torah portions, they come at you like just like a wave. They hit you every week. They just one after the next. You have keep your head above the water and get through them. And as I was studying it this week, I'm like, man, I was just pulling up some wild stuff, and really, I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about tonight. So as always, I need to get right to it. So just quickly, just a reminder. Next week, I want to thank everybody for making this a part of your tradition and your family. It's so wonderful to hear that families sit around and they listen to these. And if you are capable, if you're able, I know a lot of people are busy on Friday nights, but if you want to come by my Discord group, there's a link under every video, and be sure to be there. It would be 7 p.m. Eastern time, 2-hour block. Come in, say hi to us, tell us about yourself, and I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to answer any questions you might have. I'll try the best I can. All right, Paleo BARASHAYATH. We are, of course, reading through chapter 37, verse 1 through 40:23 this week. Continuance of the history of Yaakov and of Yosef. And of course, Yosef would be Yayoasaf, if I'm pronouncing that right. History of Yaakov and Yosef. Yaakov continued to reside. Now, right there, I put a little brackets. That's not Paleo. That's not Pamela's translation. I added that in because she put continued to reside. A lot of translations will say settled, and it's just interesting because the beginning of this, many of these Torah portions, if you've noticed, the beginning sentence and the end sentence kind of contrast each other. And we're watching here how Yaakov is trying to settle into the land. He's trying to make this his home, and we're going to see it takes a drastic turn, and the slow crawl through Exodus, through Egypt, through Mitzrayim and their slavery that is about to begin. And last week, I couldn't even read to you. There wasn't enough time to read all the chapters in Jasher where they're just like, it's several chapters, and they're just going to war. The sons of Yaakov, the 12 sons. Actually, it worked out to the 10 sons of Yaakov, because Yosef and Benjamin did not go to war with any nations, and that actually plays into the narrative tonight. But they're just wiping out these people coming to wipe them out, and they just want to make a home here, right? And they're having a really difficult time doing it. So Yaakov continued to reside in the land of his father's wanderings, in the land of Canaan. These are the progeny of Yaakov. Yosef, a lad of 17 years, was attending to the sheep with his brothers, the young men who were the sons of Balaha and sons of Zalapaha, two of his father's women. and those would be, of course, the maidens, servants to Leah and Rachel. And Joseph reported their bad conduct to their father. Oh, Joseph, he has so much to learn. Yasharel also loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. So he made him a tunic extending to his wrists and ankles. Now, I'm going to have commentary on Joseph's reports, his evil reports that he gives about his brothers. But also here you can see that Pamela, interestingly enough, did not translate this to a coat of many colors. And I'm going to be showing you some references to that as well. And at first I'm like, that's interesting because it really stood out to me. I don't always catch all the changes that Pamela makes with the Paleo translation. This one really stood out to me. And as I was looking at it closer, I'm like, actually, no, she's got this probably right because a lot of translators, they put in a coat of many colors. Like at this point, it's like a staple, right? It was a Broadway play, I think an Andrew Lloyd Webber Broadway play. And just people expect to see the coat of, they want to see it there, but that may be a mistranslation. That it's actually like a coat that it's like covering his whole body. It's extending to his wrist. It's just this huge coat. It's like a flowing coat, not necessarily multicolored. And his brothers saw their father loved him more than all his brothers, so they hated him and could not bring themselves to speak to him with shalom. Sounds like a lot of sibling relationships. And I have to say, this is one of those examples that of polygyny. Like, when you got a brother from another mother, I mean, it's like, oh man, I can't imagine for all the people out there that want to try to make that work. Joseph, however, dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers, and they hated him the more for it. This is just not going in a good direction tonight. Where he said, listen now to the dream that I dreamed. It just keeps going south. We were binding sheaves in the middle of a field when my sheaf arose and stood up, and your sheaves turned and bowed to my sheaf. I mean, I have two brothers. I've got two sons. I'm sure many of you have multiple brothers. Like, you could see where this would go. I mean, you're telling this to your siblings. But they replied to their brother, reigning, will you reign, and ruling, would you rule over us? A lot of people would I've seen people make the arguments that they're actually mistranslating his dream. So they hated him the more because of his dream and his talk. Then he dreamed another dream and related it to his brothers, not learning his lesson at all, and said, I have dreamed another dream. Oh, gee, Joseph, tell us about it. When the sun and the moon and 11 stars came and did homage to me, he told it to his father and to his brothers, and his father reproved him and said, what is this dream which you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers come and bow down to the ground to you? So now it's like hitting, Yaakov. He's like, all right, look, when it was like you and your brothers, that's one thing. But now you're bringing you're bringing me into this. And it's kind of interesting too. I never picked up on this till this week. He said, shall I and your mother? His mother is dead, guys. So he's talking about Joseph's mother in present tense. I don't think he's meaning Leah here. I mean, Leah could have taken over as his mother, but I kind of take that as Rebecca. I'm sorry, Rachel, not Rivka, but Rachel. So that's kind of interesting. She's dead, and he's speaking about her as bowing down to him. Shall we come and bow down to the ground to you? So his brothers envied him, but his father remembered the events. That right there kind of reminds me of Miriam, the Virgin Miriam, when she stored up all these things in her heart. She considered these things that were happening. It didn't make sense to her at the time. Seemed counterproductive or intuitive, but she thought about them as the years rolled on, and you see that with Yaakov as well. So a few notes here. Who was Yaakov's firstborn? This really hit me this week. I was thinking about this. And we see right here in BARASHAYATH 37, remember a couple weeks ago. Well, this is this week, right? So Yasharel also loved Joseph more than all his children. Then we read right here in BARASHAYATH chapter 29. So this would be from a couple weeks ago. Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the eldest was Leah, and the name of the youngest was Rachel. But the eyes of Leah were tender, and those of Rachel perfect in form, and she was a vision to look upon. And Yaakov loved Rachel. So he replied, I will serve you 7 years for your youngest daughter, Rachel. Laban then replied, good, she shall be yours. I will give her for a woman after you have stayed with me. So Yaakov waited for Rachel 7 years, but they were to him like a single day because of the love he had for her. Now, everything was in reverse order. You guys know how this went down. Yaakov ended up marrying Leah first. I think he waited 7 or 10 days, or something like that. He was able to marry Rachel, but still had to work another 7 years, 14 years in all. And then there was years beyond that. And so, the two wives are competing for children, and Leah keeps having children. And then, and pretty soon when Leah kind of dries up, the spigot dries up, they start giving their I can't even think, their maidens, right? And so they're all having children, and Joseph is one of the last to come along. Of course, Benjamin is the last. We saw that she died in childbirth, Benjamin. But the question I was asking myself, in Yaakov's eyes, was Joseph the firstborn? It was through the wife he loved, right? And it was like a reverse order. I know Reuben was the first, and you have Yehuda and Levi, but it's almost like he's taking the place of the first. Then we saw here the coat of many colors. I pointed this out, you see, I looked up. This is the Berean Bible right here, Genesis 37:3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons because if Joseph had been born to him in his old age, we made him a robe of many colors. And you go down the list; they all say many colors. Well, this interestingly had a note here, and it said possibly a robe with long sleeves. And they say the same thing in verses 23 and 32. So the translator here is saying, look, I'm putting in many colors because that's what you want to hear, but we're thinking that's not what it is. So good catch with that. That was good. So, all right, let's talk about Joseph and Matthew 18. The tough discussion that many of us will have to have in our lifetime. It said, and Joseph reported their bad conduct to their father. Now Joseph is given really bad rap for this, and I don't know if he should or shouldn't. He is, after all, being sent by his father to report on his brothers, and he's not bringing back the best reports. And we're going to see why that is actually justified tonight a little bit. But this came to mind, Matthew 18. I mean, in reality, he should have. We don't know if he did or didn't. All right, so I don't know if he should have a bad rap or not. I really don't know, but he should have spoken to his brothers first. All right, so this is what he says. This is coming from the words of Messiah. Moreover, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. And I think probably he did. We're going to see later on, like he's like weeping and crying, and he's doing a Matthew 18, right? But if he will not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of two or three witnesses every word may be established. And if he refuses to hear them, tell it to the assembly. But if he refuses even to hear the assembly, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. Totally dissing those tax collectors there. Tax collectors are on level with heathens, right? And in my entire life, and so far in my ministry of the unexpected cosmology, like the 8 years or something I've been in this now, I've only had to do a Matthew 18 once, and it was tough. It was really hard. Some of you know exactly what I'm referring to, where I was actually asked by another very large YouTube ministry, the leader of that ministry, to accompany him to go to someone privately and have this discussion. And I was trying to go so by the book with Matthew 18 that after our private meeting kind of revealed our deepest, worst fears of the situation, I actually still didn't come back and report it to the congregation. I'm just like, we're not even going there. We're just going to let this reveal itself. So this is really tough. It's much easier to go and go to people like, can you believe what that guy said over there, and spread it to the community. And so just remember that here when we give a evil reports about other people and their doings. Um, this came to my mind as well as I was reflecting, and I made the mention that sometimes these dreams might be misinterpreted. And something I would like to do, I'm not going to do tonight. I have too much material to cover. Is go through like the 100. There's like a list of like 100 things, ways that Yosef mirrors Mashiach. I mean, he is a clear Messiah prototype, and never more in Philippians 2:5 with what Paul says. I always have to throw in one Paul quote every week. Just I get angry letters from the anti-Paul crowd that I quote from him too much. So I think like once a week is too much. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Yahushua HaMashiach, who, being in the form of Elohim, did not consider it robbery to be equal with Elohim, but made himself no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. And this is one of the things that, when the stars and the sun and the moon and everyone is bowing down to Yosef in this dream, some people have said that that the dream is misinterpreted, that it really shouldn't be about Yosef, it should be about Messiah. I don't know if I agree with that. I think that the dream is about Yosef. I think that they are bowing down to him. But the thing is that in this, with the sheath and the bowing down, what we're going to see over the next few weeks, particularly this week and the next week, is a Yosef who literally it's not like it's not the worldly type of worship, right? Of just being gloried. He is actually humbling himself to the point where he is like serving. His being of use to the nations is through his service to them, very much like we see with Messiah in his ministry. All right, so let's see what the same section has to say in Jasher chapter 41. And at the revolution of the year, the sons of Yaakov journeyed from Shechem, and they came to Hebron to their father Yitzchak, and they dwelt there. But their flocks and herds they fed daily in Shechem. For there was there in those days good and fat pasture, and Yaakov and his sons and all their household dwelt in the valley of Hebron. I find this fascinating that Jasher, like I said, has just gone through chapter after chapter where all these wars happen. They finally settle down, and where do they go? But to Shechem. All right. Shechem is the site where Dinah was taken by that snooty French villain who raped her and tried to make her his woman. They went in and they circumcised everyone, and while they're keeling over in the fetal position and pain, they went in and did them all in. Of course, Yehuda and Levi. It's interesting that we see them back at Shechem, and now the table is turned, and now it's like they were the 12 sons, or you say the 10 sons, were so like just so angry at what Shechem did to their sister. Now we're back at Shechem again, and they're going to do. We could argue what was worse. I mean, they were going to murder their brother. We know they're going to murder their brother, and they decided slavery, some blood wouldn't be on their hands. And it all happened in the same place. It was in those days, in that year being the 106th year of the life of Yaakov, and the 10th year of Yaakov's coming from Aram, that Leah, the wife of Yaakov, died. She was 51 years old when she died in Hebron. And Yaakov and his sons buried her in the cave. So that's interesting. I don't know if when Yaakov made that quip about myself and your mother, was Leah even alive at that point? We don't really know. Of course, you guys know that Leah wasn't his actual mom. And Yaakov and his sons buried her in the cave, the field of Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth for the possession of a burial place. So interesting that Rachel did not end up in that tomb. And the sons of Yaakov dwelt with their father in the valley of Hebron, and all the inhabitants of the land knew their strength, and their fame went throughout the land. And Joseph, the son of Yaakov, and his brother Benjamin, the sons of Rachel, the wife of Yaakov, were yet young in those days, and did not go out with their brother during their battles in all the cities of the Amorites. So think about this. This is what's being set up here as to why the hostility from the older brothers. The older brothers just went out and wiped out like a dozen cities with fortresses, hundreds, thousands of people. All toppled kings' thrones. These were like powerful dudes. And then you got your little snooty brother from another mother coming along, and he's got a baby brother, Benjamin. Either one of them has taken part of these battles. And he's like, "Oh, that's great and all. You did that. By the way, you're gonna serve me. You're gonna, bow down to me." You could see where these guys are like, "What? Like, what are you tripping on?" And when Yosef saw the strength of his brethren and their greatness, he praised them and extolled them, but he ranked himself greater than them. Of course, he's he's a young kid, right? So some things you need to keep to yourself. And extolled himself above them. And Yaakov, his father, also loved him more than any of his sons, for he was a son of his old age. And through his love toward him, he made him a coat of colors. Now, keep in mind, Jasher also comes from the Masoretic Hebrew. So I would love to look at a translation, and the translator probably just put many colors here, but it could be exactly as Pamela translated in the Paleo. And when Yosef saw that his father loved him more than his brethren, he continued to exalt himself above his brethren, because that's exactly what siblings do. They work their parents against their brothers. And he continued to exalt himself above his brethren, and he brought unto his father evil reports concerning them. And so you see right here that, if I'm reading this right, we can argue, I guess, whether Joseph's motivations are good here. It just says that he saw that his father loved him more than him, so he continues to exalt himself above his brother. And not only that, bring evil reports. And this is what, anyone who has children, this is what they do. They come to you all the time. They tattletale on their brothers and sisters all the time, them in trouble to virtue signal their own worth, right? Why they're to be praised. See, it's the same thing with Yosef. Now, this is one of the things I love about the Bible. It's not cookie cutter, right? You've got this great guy. Joseph is one of the greatest humble servants of the Bible, and yet he had some growing up to do. And he had to be taken into very dark territory to prove his worth. Yosef was 17 years old, okay, and he was still magnifying himself above his brethren and thought of raising himself above them. At that time, he dreamed a dream. Let's see, I don't know if I want to go through all this again. Old territory. Okay, yeah, that's all I wanted to cover there. All right, let's get back into Paleo BARASHAYATH, chapter 37, 12 through 36. His brothers afterwards, I'm just checking to make sure. Okay, so I'm just checking to see if it's my connection, but it looks like it's one person's connection. His brothers afterwards went to pasture their sheep in Shechem. And Yasher, so again, they're setting up just like, the whole situation died. It's, his own, the family doing it to themselves this time. And Yasher said to Yosef, "Are your brothers not feeding the sheep in Shechem? Go, I will send you to them." And he replied, "I am ready." And then that might be virtue signal right there, I don't know. Then he continued, "Go then and see how your brothers are and how the sheep are, and send me word." They had gone, however, from the vale of Chabaron and removed to Shechem. They left Shechem. And a man met him while searching the field and asked him, "What are you seeking?" And he answered, "I am seeking my brothers. Tell me where I can find them." So the man answered, "They have marched from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to the two wells.'" Now, I added their little note, Dothan. And basically, any translation you read is going to say Dothan. And I love that how Pamela basically put the two wells. It's like the place of the two wells. Yosef consequently went after his brothers and found them at the two wells at Dothan. When they saw him in the distance, and before he approached them, each said to his brother, "Here is my Adon, the dreamer. There he comes." So, really sarcastic. They got just hatred in their heart. They're just like, "Oh, great. He's going to come. He's going to spy on us. He's going to send bad report back to his father. We're going to hear about it. And we're going to have to sit around the family table while he's in his coats and being praised and the head of the table, all this kind of stuff. So now let us go and murder him." Oh, that escalated really quickly. It's amazing how cyclical repeated the Bible is. Like, starting with Cain and Abel, and going to Yitzhak and Ishmael to Yaakov and Esau, and now we got more murder amongst the brothers. So let's go and murder him and fling him into one of these wells. We will say a wild beast caught him. Then we will see what will come of his dreams. But Reuben, or if I can pronounce this, Haban, say Reuben, but Reuben heard it and wished to deliver him from their hand. So he said, "Let us not destroy his life." Reuben also said to them, "Let us not shed his blood. Let us fling him into this dry well." For he was desirous that they should not stab him, so that he might rescue him from the hands to return him to his father. So Reuben had, he had a. I think Reuben learned his lesson by this point. I didn't go into it last week. We just didn't have enough time. That's the portions. But Reuben went and he bedded with was it Bilhah? His he was of course the son of Leah, and so he bedded with one of after Rachel died, he bedded with one of his other women, and I think really learned his lesson. He really repented of that for the rest of his life. His father could never lay with that woman again. He corrupted her, and so now he's like, I don't want to cause more destruction in this family. I don't want to be the guy that does it. I can kind of redeem myself here. So he's kind of trying to work his brothers into, convincing them to throw them into a pit with the full intent of pulling them out when they're not looking and returning them to his father. Now, the question should be asked, why is there a dry well? Now, Pamela put in here the place of the two wells. It seems that there doesn't seem, when you look at this, there doesn't appear to be any wells with water. And so now you can begin to understand the evil reports. Joseph could have gone there and looked around and gone back to the father and go, yeah, they left Shechem and they went to this place where there's no water. They're not adequately taking care of your sheep. And that should be the other point the other thing to point out is that we went through the last couple of weeks wherever Yaakov went. Remember Yitzhak, okay, let's back up. Abraham dies. And immediately the Canaanites, they start filling in his wells. I just did a whole video on this. They start filling in his wells. So Yitzhak goes and digs them up again. And people, they go and argue. And there's just strife over the wells. And then with Yaakov, it's the same thing with him. The whole time that he was back with Laban, the wells, they bubbled over and they overflowed. And so this idea of spiritual health through the water and how people who don't want to be in a covenant with Yahuwah, how the waters dry up, right? And this is all leads us to Yahushua Mashiach. He's the living waters, all this kind of stuff. So now we're in a situation where you have the 10 brothers who are not with the living water. They are at a well that is not bubbling up. There's no water in this. Therefore, when Joseph was come to his brothers, they stripped the tunic which was on him, the tunic that extended to his wrists and ankles, and took him and flung him into the empty well with no water in it. Not only did this water have no water in it, well, you'll see what's in it. It's pretty bad. Let me read the next Jasher portion. Then they turned to eat bread, which reminds me to take a drink of coffee here. But looking up, they saw at a distance, this would be the children of Ishmael, Yashmei Alayam, coming from Gilead with their camels loaded with spices and nuts and balm, who were going down to Mitzrayim. It's kind of a nice little detail there that they're throwing their brother into a dry pit, and they take notice of the spices and the nuts and the balm on the camels. Then Yehuda said to his brothers, what profit is it to us to murder our brother and dabble ourselves with his blood? Now you got two brothers that are going in the right direction. They're going in a better direction. Reuben went in the even better direction, but Yehuda's kind of in the ballpark. Come on, let us sell him to these Ishmaelites or Yishmei Alayam, and that guilt will not be upon us, for he is our brother and our own flesh. So yeah, just sell him in slavery, Yehuda. And of course, this would be turned back on Yehuda in later years, I believe. So they listened to their brother. Meantime, those the Midianite merchants came on. So this can be a little confusing, but they see these children of Ishmael on their way to Egypt, way out there, and they're talking about them. But as they're talking about, before the Ishmaelites are able to approach, these Midianites come up. Who are the Midianites? Well, Abraham, after the death of Sharaha, after the death of Sarah, he marries it's a name I just had in my head too, like 30 seconds ago. Whatever, we'll get there. He marries the daughter of Abimelech. Keturah is her name. Oh, when you're live and you don't have notes in front of you. He marries Keturah, and one of their sons is Midian. And of course, we know that Moshe marries a daughter of a priest of Midian. And so these are Midianites. And they're coming up. These Midianite merchants came on. So in both cases, these are all family. These are all cousins. Like they all should know each other, really. Talk about like an awkward family gathering. And they approached. So they lifted up Yosef from out of the well and sold Yosef to the Ishmaelites, Ishmael Alayam, which is interesting that they brought the Midianites here. And they don't, for 20 pieces of silver. Thus, Yosef was taken down to Mitzrayim. And of course, Jasher will go into more detail on that situation. Therefore, when Reuben returned to the well, so he wasn't there then, or else he would have stopped it, I think. He did not find Yosef in the well, so he tore his garments. When he went back to his brothers, he said, "The lad is not, and mourning I shall grieve and die of grief." They, however, took and slaughtered a goat kid and dabbled his tunic in blood, sent the long tunic back to their father with this message: "About this tunic which we sent you, send back and say if it is the tunic of your son or not." It's really interesting too, like when you see just like on a subconscious level, their total disdain for that tunic, right? Like their disdain for their brother is kind of like in that the tunic are kind of like married to each other. And he replied, "It is the tunic of my son. Some wild beast has torn and eaten my son." Yaakov consequently tore his garments and put on sackcloth for his death and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and all his daughters arose to console him. That's all this stuff. I shouldn't even laugh. Yeah, all his sons console him for the death of his son. But he refused their consolations and said, "I know that I shall go mourning for my son to the grave." So he wept for his son. And so now, his sons are sitting around going, "Oh, great. Now he's going to mourn for him." Like, you're supposed to mourn for like 7 days. So now he's, we could make it through like the next week of the mourning and move on with our life. But great. Now, now we got to keep this lie going for the rest of his life. But the Midianites sold him in Mitzrayim to, that would be Potiphar, but Tephar, the general of Pharaoh, commander of his guards. All right. So let's see what Jasher has to say here. And the sons of Yaakov went one day to feed their father's flocks in Shechem, for they were still herdsmen in those days. And while the sons of Yaakov were that day feeding in Shechem, they played, and the time of gathering the cattle was past, and they had not yet arrived. So again, we see right here that they were not on curfew, right? Like when it comes to shepherding and cattle, I remember when I was a teenager, I spent a summer in Kenya, out in the middle of the Rift Valley, and you would see the Maasai, the little shepherd boys. They would be like 10, 11, 12, 13. I mean, I was 16 at the time. They were younger than me. And these were little killers. I mean, they really did face like lions and, all sorts of, hyenas, all sorts of creatures out there. And they would take them out through the day. But when it's, sunset, you get them in their pens, right? You bring them back. So I'm thinking the cattle, the sheep, whatever it was, they were not where they were supposed to be. And so the dad has good concern, like maybe something's going to happen. And then look what he says next. And Yaakov saw that his sons were delayed in Shechem, right? So he's thinking Shechem. He remembers what happened in Shechem. And Yaakov said within himself, "Peradventure, the people of Shechem have risen up to fight against them. Therefore, they have delayed coming this day." Why wouldn't he think that? I mean, it's been one thing after the next. He's just like, He's like walking on eggshells here in Canaan. He knows he's supposed to inherit this land, but he is not on good terms with anybody there. And all he ever hears is how people are trying to wipe out his family, right? So he's sending his son in, Yosef, to check out the scene. And Yaakov called Yosef, his son, and commanded him, saying, behold, thy brethren are feeding in Shechem this day, and behold, they have not yet come back. Go now, therefore, and see where they are, and bring me word back concerning the welfare of thy brethren and the welfare of the flock. And Yaakov sent his son Yosef to the valley of Hebron, and Yosef came for his brothers to Shechem and could not find them. And Yosef went about the field, which was near Shechem, to see where his brothers had turned. And I'm guessing this is the same field that we saw that Yaakov actually purchased. So unless he sold it, I'm assuming this is still his field. And he missed his road in the wilderness and knew not which way he should go. Now, this is really interesting here. And an angel of Yahweh found him wandering toward the field. And Joseph said to the angel of Yahweh, seek my brethren, as thou not heard where they are feeding. And the angel of Yahweh said unto Joseph, I saw thy brethren feeding here, and I heard them say they would go to feed in Dothan, the place of the two wells. Now, Jasher adds this detail about the angel of Yahweh. And I know how this goes, because especially when you're in Torah circles, people who read the Torah are very well versed in the actual Bible, the Bible itself, more than most, right? And so there's always that one person, you're at the Torah party and you're eating hors d'oeuvres. And of course, you're not going to have the shrimp hors d'oeuvres, right? You're having like hummus and falafel and that kind of stuff, and pita bread. And you're sitting around talking. There's always that one person in the room that says, well, angel really means messenger. It doesn't actually mean a celestial being. And I've had conversations with enough of them where it's like every single time it's his angel. It's a man. It's just a human messenger every single time. And I'm like, really? Like every single time? Because when you read the LXX, like the word is like angelos in the Greek. And so are you telling me now that like you're like an angel agnostic, right? You're totally agnostic angel. You're telling me that at the tomb of Mashiach, that those were two men who rolled back the stone and were sitting there? Because now we've got problems, because if those were not angels from heaven, now we got problems, because now we're back on the theory if someone stole his body, a human came in and stole his body. Was it Peter and John sitting out there, that scared the women when they came up, scared the troops, all that kind of stuff. All that to say, in this situation, in the argument that an angel can be a human messenger, just a messenger of Yahuwah, I could totally see this being some dude, but like not an angel, just a dude. Like maybe it is not an angel standing out there in the field. That being said, though, this is still Yasher is placing importance on this. It's not some random dude. It's not some random stranger he met out there. Like it's making out like this angel, like Yosef had a divine appointment. And the angel knew it. He is working for Yahuwah, and he's there to re-guide him to his brothers, knowing what's going to happen. That's what I love about this here in Yasher. They're painting it in this way that it's not a coincidence. All right. And Yosef hearkened to the voice of the angel of Yahuwah, and he went to his brother in Dothan, and he found them in Dothan feeding the flock. And Yosef advanced to his brethren, and before he had come nigh unto them, they had resolved to slay him. And we already saw that. I don't know if I want to read all this again. Oh, okay. So, and when Yosef came to his brethren, he sat before them, and they rose up upon him and seized him and smote him to the earth and stripped the coat of many colors which he had on. And so we know about the dry pit, right? Well, they took him and cast him into a pit. In the pit, there was no water. We know that. But serpents and scorpions. So we have just taken this spiritual depravity, like this moral depravity, the spiritual depravity to new levels now. Because now not only are they feeding their sheep in a place with no water, but there are serpent and scorpions that they, throw their brother into. So, like, how could the situation be made any worse? And Yosef was afraid of the serpents and scorpions that were in the pit. And Yosef cried out with a loud voice. And Yahuwah had hid the serpents and scorpions in the sides of the pit, and they did no harm unto Yosef. And we're going to see this, like, we keep reading through Jasher that like all these things happen to Yosef, and it's you get the sense that Yahweh is purposely allowing it to happen, and then removing the situation, like the serpents and the scorpions. So later on, uh, the was it the Ishmaelites or the Midianites? I'm not sure which at this point. Their hands wither, and then Yosef prays, and their hands restored. And Yahweh has taken them through the situation to say, "Look, you're going to go through some really hard times, but I'm going to be there for you. It's all in my plan. I'm going to take care of it." So I think this was really important that he's thrown in the pit. He's scared of them, and he sees them leave when he cries out. That would give kind of anyone a boost of confidence, even though he's very emotional. And Yosef called out from the pit to his brethren and said unto them, "What have I done unto you? And in what have I sinned? Why do you not fear Yahuwah concerning me?" Ouch. "And am I not of your bones and flesh? And is not Yaakov your father and my father? Why do you do this thing unto me this day? And how will you be able to look up to our father Yaakov?" If that's not a Matthew 18, then I don't know what it is. And if they don't listen to him, then go back and report it to his father because he's not given a chance. And he continued to cry out and call unto his brethren from the pit. And he said, "O Yehuda, Simeon, and Levi, my brethren, lift me up from the place of darkness which you have placed me, and come this day to have compassion on me, ye children of Yahuwah and sons of Yaakov, my father. And if I have sinned unto you, are you not the sons of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? If they saw an orphan, they had compassion over him, or one that was hungry, they gave him bread to eat, or one that was thirsty, they gave him water to drink, or one that was naked, they covered him with garments." And of course, you see what he's saying right here. All these things are very, very, very important to Messiah. We're going to see that ultimately Yosef had that same heart, and his brothers were failing in every way, shape, or form. Here, I don't even need to reiterate that. "And how then will you withhold your pity from your brother? For I am of your flesh and bones. And if I have sinned unto you, surely you will do this on account of my father." He's like, "Look, even if you despise me, fine. I get it. You don't have to like me. For the sake of our father, don't do this." And Yosef spoke these words from the pit, and his brethren did not listen to him, nor incline their ears to the words of Yosef. And Yosef was crying and weeping in the pit. It's kind of like they had already made up their mind what they're going to do, even though they knew they were wrong. They knew they were doing an evil thing. That's why they couldn't listen to him. Speak common sense. And Joseph said, "Oh, that my father knew this day the act which my brothers have done unto me, and the words which they have this day spoken unto me." And all his brethren heard his cries and weeping in the pit, and his brethren went to remove themselves from the pit, so that they might not hear the cries of Joseph and his weeping in the pit. Let's see here. Okay. So now we see let's see, they're sitting around, they're eating, and they were holding the council when they lifted up their eyes, verse 2, and saw him. Behold, there was a company of Ishmaelites coming at a distance by the road of Gilead, going down to Mitzrayim. And Yehuda said unto them, what gain will it be us if we slay our brother? Peradventure Allahayam will require him from us. This then is the counsel proposed concerning, we know he tries to summon the slavery. Let's skip to verse 5 here for lack of time. I found this really interesting. And while they were discoursing about this matter, what to do with Joseph, before the company of Ishmaelites had come to them, 7 trading men of Midian passed by them. So they must be, like, I don't know if they're at a crossroads, like they're looking, I'm trying to imagine this, like they're looking way down this road, like maybe they have a good vantage point, maybe the Ishmaelites are like 2 or 3 miles away. I don't know how far away they're. A good distance away. They could see the dust, right, kind of kicking up and this caravan coming. And all of a sudden, boom, these Midianites show up. Maybe they come from another angle. And as they passed, they were thirsty. And so this is kind of the interesting part. They see these people out there, these shepherds with cattle, sheep, whatever they had, this flock, and they're like, okay, well, they must have water, right? They're at a well. And so they completely, of course, misjudged the character, right? They were thirsty, and they lifted up their eyes and saw the pit in which Joseph was immured. What a fun word is that? Inured. And they looked, and behold, every species of bird was upon him. And I don't know what to make of that. That's kind of interesting because all the according to Jasher, the scorpions and the serpents left. I don't know if this is like a vision they see. I don't know why there's always birds on Yosef because we never hear about it again, to my understanding. And these Midianites ran to the pit to drink water, for they thought that it contained water. Well, they thought wrong. And on coming before the pit, they heard the voice of Yosef crying and weeping in the pit. And they looked down into the pit, and they saw, and behold, there was a youth of comely appearance and well favored. So it's kind of weird. It's like they repeat it. Like they see Yosef in the pit, and he's covered in birds, but then they run up to the pit, and then they see him, and there's no birds. So I find those two sentences a little strange right there, and what's really going on. But let's not focus on birds. And they called unto him and said, Who art thou, and who brought thee hither? And who placed thee in this pit in the wilderness? And they all assisted to raise up Yosef, and they drew him out and brought him up from the pit and took him and went away on their journey and passed by his brethren. Remember now, the brethren had removed themselves at this point because they could no longer hear his cry. They couldn't, they just couldn't deal with the morality or the immorality of what they were doing. And these said unto them, Why do you do this, to take our servant from us and go away? Surely we placed this youth in the pit because he rebelled against us. And you come and bring him up and lead him away. Now then give us back our servant. Okay, they argue, and then, of course, and then we know what the sons of Yaakov are going to say here, verse 11. And all the sons of Yaakov approached them and rose up to them and said unto them, Give us back our servant, and why will you all die by the edge of the sword? So they just really dropped the challenge there. They're like, do you know who we are? We're the dudes who went around and killed everybody. And the Midianites cried out against them, and they drew their swords. So the Midianites don't know who they are yet. They're like, it's about to go down. And they approached to fight with the sons of Yaakov. And behold, Simeon rose up from his seat against them and sprang upon the ground and drew the sword and approached the Midianites, and he gave a terrible shout before them, so that his shouting was heard at a distance, and the earth shook at Simeon's shouting. And the Midianites were terrified on account of Simeon and the noise of his shouting. They fell upon their faces and were excessively alarmed. And this is where he announces himself. And Simeon said unto them, Verily, I am Simeon, the son of Yaakov the Hebrew, who have only with my brother destroyed the city of Shechem and the cities of the Amorites. So they would have, of course, these Midianites would have totally known this. It would have been like, oops, yeah, you're those people. Forgive us. We didn't know. So shall Elohim moreover do unto me, that if all your brethren, the people of Midian, and also the kings of Canaan, were to come with you, they could not fight against me. Now therefore give us back the youth whom you have taken, lest I give your flesh to the birds of the skies and the beasts of the earth. That's kind of interesting because that's a line that Goliath later said to David. There's also a lot of smack talking in this book. Man, those brothers got together. It was like before a wrestling match. I mean, they just they laid down the smack talk. I don't know why I've got this itch tonight. And the Midianites were more afraid of Simeon, and they approached the sons of Yaakov with terror and fright and with pathetic words, saying, Surely you have said that the young man is your servant, and that he rebelled against you, and therefore you placed him in the pit. What then will you do with a servant who rebels against his master? Now therefore sell him unto us, and we will give you all that you require for him. And Yahuwah was pleased to do this in order that the sons of Yaakov should not slay their brother. And the Midianites, and as I pointed out, these are the sons of Abraham and Keturah, saw that Joseph was of comely appearance and well favored. They desired him in their hearts and were urgent to purchase him from his brethren. I don't actually know. I had some amazing thought in my mind. Highlighted all that. Well, yeah. He was a good. Well, we'll see tonight. He was good looking. That's not what I wanted to say, but I'll try to sound a little bit intelligent right there. I honestly don't know why I highlighted that, and I'll probably think about it later after I'm no longer alive. I'm like, oh man. And the sons of Yaakov hearkened to the Midianites, and they sold their brother Joseph to them for 20 pieces of silver. And Reuben, their brother, was not with them, and the Midianites took Joseph and continued their journey to Gilead. Now, we see here that the Midianites are like, what have we done? They start talking about it. And so they decide that, so verse 23, the Midianites are realizing they've made a mistake. and they think that now they feel like there's something about Yosef that the 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 brothers, they don't know that he's their brothers, that they lied to him. They kind of figured that out. And so they see the Ishmaelites coming. So like, let's sell them to them. They do exactly for 20 pieces of silver. So like there's no blood on their hands. It's a trade. Just like we paid 20 pieces of silver. We're not looking for profit. You guys give us 20 pieces. They did. And went on his way. And this goes on and on and on. Now this is an interesting part here. Let's see. And what verse 27 here. So now he's with the Ishmaelites are on their way out to Egypt. And one of the Ishmaelites rose up. And that's why I said that in the Genesis account is kind of interesting because it didn't have that transfer. Like it said they saw the Ishmaelites coming, then the Midianites were there, and then he was sold to the Ishmaelites, right? But you kind of see the transfer here a little bit better. And one of the Ishmaelites wrote, okay, so Yosef, it says that Yosef is crying. I mean, he is weeping, and they're like, okay, fine, you can't be on a camel now. You got to walk. We don't even want to hear this. Now he's crying more, and he said, oh, my father, my father. So one of the Ishmaelites rose up and smote Yosef upon the cheek. Still he continued to weep. And Yosef was fatigued in the road and was able to proceed on account of the bitterness of his soul. He's probably been walking quite a long time now. Now, if these Ishmaelites are all on camels, right, and you're going now on a road through the deserts, and the only guy that we know is walking is a young boy, Yosef, who's been through a terrible ordeal. He's probably getting, kind of drugged behind the camel now. So, and they all smote him. So now they're all like just slapping the boy silly, saying, keep up with this, stop crying. We're tired of hearing it. We'll give you something to cry about, right? And they all smote him and afflicted him in the road, and they terrified him in order that he might cease from weeping. And Yahuwah saw the ambition of Yosef and his trouble, and Yahuwah brought down upon those men darkness and confusion, and the hand of everyone that smote him became withered. All right, so you see Yahuwah here. Basically, he's in a way, he's like telling Yosef, like, look, I got your back. Yeah, there's bad things that are going to happen to you, but I'm taking account of everything. Whatever people do to you, like if you just stay true to me, like I got your back. But this is really interesting too. We'll get to that in a second. And they said to each other, what is this thing that Alayam has done to us in the road? And they knew not that this befell them on account of Yosef. And then so they don't get it. They're not making the connection. And the men proceeded on the road, and they passed along the road of Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. Right, so they're past Bethlehem now. And Yosef reached his mother's grave, and Yosef hastened and ran to his mother's grave. So he broke away from them. He's like a slave on the run now. We don't know how far he ran, but it's within sight. And he fell upon the grave and wept. And the Ishmaelites were like, oh, okay, this guy's a hot mess, right? And Yosef cried aloud upon his mother's grave, and he said, oh, my mother, oh, thou who did give me birth, awake now, and rise and see thy son, how he has been sold for a slave, no one to pity him. Oh, rise and see thy son, weep with me on account of my troubles, and see the heart of my brethren. Arouse, my mother, arouse, awake from thy sleep for me, direct thy battles against my brethren. Oh, how they stripped me of my coats, and sold me already twice for a slave, and separated me from my father, and there is no one to pity me. Arouse and lay cause against them before Allahayam, and see whom Allahayam will justify the judgment, and whom he will condemn. Rise, O my, so he's like, calling on a trial here, right, with the Most High. Rise, O my mother, rise, awake from thy sleep, and see my father have souls with me this day, and comfort him and ease his heart. And Yosef continued to speak these words, and Yosef cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave, and he ceased speaking, and from bitterness of heart he became still as a stone upon the grave. And here's the part that really tripped me out the first time I ever read this. And Yosef heard a voice speaking to him from beneath the ground. Can you imagine that situation? Like, you're on, like, you're going to the grave of your mother, right? She's buried there physically, and you're just weeping, and you're there, and I mean, he's not exactly hearing like a heartbeat, like thump, 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 right? It's not like a hand's coming out like in a horror film, but that's not exactly what you expect to hear. Uh, but he did. I mean, he apparently this was his prayer that she come. What was his exact words? Uh, let's see, and yeah, rise, awake from thy sleep, and that's the whole idea that when you're in Sheol, they would be asleep. You guys know that. Uh, Okay, and he heard a voice from beneath the ground, which answered him with bitterness of heart and with a voice of weeping and praying in these words. Quickly state that there are that I know of. There's only two instances in Scripture. Yeah, I'm throwing this in Scripture, where we see somebody actually awaking from their sleep in Sheol miraculously to speak to the world of the living. Now, the other instance would be Samuel with the witch of Endor. In that case, it appears his ruach actually comes up to the earth. In this instance, you don't get a sense that Rachel ever left Sheol. She's still in Sheol, but she has woken up and is speaking in Sheol, and somehow there is a supernatural transfer from her resting place in Sheol, wherever that is in the earth, to her actual place of burial. And I think that this fits very well with the Hebrew idea of the need to actually bury somebody in a physical location. There are other instances, I guess, in the Arabic Targum, where uh, Adam and Eve also their voices rang out from the tomb about the time Abraham and maybe when Sharaha was buried. I might have read that several weeks ago. I'm not really sure. But my son Yosef, I have heard the voices of thy weeping, the voice of thy lamentation. I have seen thy tears. I know thy troubles, my son, and it grieves me for thy sake. And abundant grief is added to my grief. Now, therefore, my son Yosef, my son, hope to Yahweh, wait for him and do not fear, for Yahweh is with thee. He will deliver thee from all trouble. Rise, my son, go down into Egypt with thy masters, and do not fear, for Yahweh is with thee, my son. And she continued to speak like unto these words unto Joseph, and she was still. I find this actually really beautiful because here she is literally in Sheol. And remember now, a couple weeks ago, Rachel still had idols with her. We saw where, like, after all these years, they were married for 14 years by this point, or however long. She and Leah, they're still coming back with idols. They agreed to go back with Yaakov, their husband, and follow his Elohim, his Elohim, Yahuwah. They had different ones in Babylon. Now we have seen Rachel make a complete journey. And here she is in death itself, in the valley of death. And she's like, look, just trust in Yahuwah. He will be with you. He will take total control, total care of you. I think that's just that contrast right there of someone speaking from death itself. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Now, we see right here a reference to this in Jeremiah 31:15-16. That says, Yahuwah, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. So people can argue against Jasher and say, "Oh no, that could never happen." Well, according to Jeremiah, it did happen. I don't think this is a syrupy hallmark metaphor, or whatever. Like, this is Yirmiyahu is referring to this amazing voice that was heard in Bethlehem, that Rachel was literally weeping for her children. She's already dead, and they could hear her voice. So it's like, well, when did that happen? Thus says Yahweh, refrain thy voice from weeping and thine eyes from tears, for thy work shall be rewarded, saith Yahweh, and they shall come again from the land of the enemy. The context there is that they're about to be taken out. Um, Yirmiyahu is speaking about Babylon coming in, and so Rachel is literally weeping for her children being taken away. Just as it is with Yosef, she's weeping that her child is being taken out, to Mitzrayim. Of course, you guys all know this passage here from Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew 2:18. In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children and would not be comforted because they are not. Of course, this is the incident when Herod, the Edomites, is going around and massacring the children age 2 and under, hoping to uh, reverse engineer the serpent's prophecy of crushing the serpent. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at this. And he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave. And his anger was kindled against him. He drove him from there. He smote him and he cursed him. And Joseph said unto the men, May I find grace in your sight to take me back to my father's house, and he will give you abundance of riches. And they answered him, saying, Art thou not a slave? And where is thy father? And if thou had a father, thou would not already twice have been sold for a slave for so little value. And their anger was still roused against him, and they continued to smite him and to chastise him. And Joseph wept bitterly. I'm seeing a total, I don't know about you guys, I'm seeing a total mirror here to the crucifixion of Yehuda HaMashiach. He's crying out about his father, and they're like, no, where's his father? Why doesn't his father come and save him? And, he must not have a father, this kind of stuff, right? And Yahuwah saw Joseph's affliction, and it says, and Lord again smote these men. The Lord. So that actually would be that's why I didn't get corrected. And Yahuwah again smote these men. I didn't catch that. And chastised them, and Yahuwah caused darkness to envelop them and upon the earth. And the lightning flashed, and the thunder roared, and the earth shook at the voice of the thunder and of the mighty wind. They were terrified and knew not where they should go. Reminds me straight out of the Gospel of Peter, when the darkness comes and people are like falling into ditches. They're all like confused. And the beast and camels stood still, and they led them, but they would not go. They smote them, and they crouched upon the ground. So the animals are, they're like beating the animals at this point, and the camels are just sitting down. And the men said to each other, What is this that Allah has done to us? What are our transgressions, and what are our sins that this thing has thus befallen us? And one of them answered and said unto them, Perhaps on account of the sin of afflicting the slave has this thing happened this day to us. Now therefore implore him strongly to forgive us, and then we shall know on whose account this evil befalleth us. And if Allah shall have compassion over us, then we shall know that all this cometh to us on account of the sin of afflicting the slave. And the men did so, and they supplicated Joseph and pressed him to forgive them. And they said, We have sent to Yahuwah to thee. Now therefore vouchsafe to request of thy Allah that he shall put away this death from amongst us, for we have sinned him. And this is the great part I love. And Joseph did according to the words, and Yahuwah hearkened to Joseph. And Yahuwah put away the plague which had afflicted upon those men on account of Joseph. Remember when sorry, I have this like weird itch. It's kind of like this, like when people like chop off their legs, right? You hear about how they have like that itch on their leg. It's not there anymore. It's awful. When Yehuda HaMashiach is being hung on the cross, he's praying that the Allah Father, that he forgive them for the transgressions that they're doing to him right there. And Joseph has just done something very similar. He just prayed that it says he hearkens according to the words. He did according to the words. So we don't have his exact words, but it was an intercession. And it says that Yahuwah put away the plague which he had inflicted upon those men on account of Joseph. And the beast rose up from the ground, and they conducted them, and they went on. The raging storm stopped, and the earth became tranquilized, and the men proceeded on their journey to go down to Egypt, and the men knew that this evil had befallen them on account of Joseph. It also says that their hands were no longer withered, and you have to keep reading a little bit further down for that. So they realized that that he had interceded on their behalf. Let's see here. This is great. So, for lack of time, I'm going to skip some of this. You can see how Jasher just goes on and on and on. But what happened is that they returned the coat to their father, and they're like, "Okay, a wild beast killed your son. Look at this." They dipped the blood of the goat right in it. And he's like, "All right, fine." Yaakov, he's so furious about this. He wants revenge, and so he says, "Whatever beast did this to my son, you need to go out and find this." Right. So now the son's like, "Great, okay." So they got to keep the lie alive, right? So let's see what it says. And his sons did as their father had commanded them, and they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth into the field to hunt the beast. So they've got to go find a thank you, Polly. Yeah, thank you, Polly, for that prayer. And he went. So they're like, great. We got to go. Find this beast that killed our brother. And Yaakov was still crying aloud and weeping and walking to and fro in the house, smiting his hands together, saying, Yosef, my son, Yosef, my son. And the sons of Yaakov went into the wilderness to seize the beast. And behold, a wolf came toward them. And they seized him and brought him unto their father. They said unto him, This is the first we have found, and we have brought him unto thee as thou did command us, but thy son's body we could not find. And Yaakov took the beast from the hands of his son. So they're saying, look, this is the first beast we found. We're not saying he's the one that killed our father. We're just, we couldn't find the brother, but we're delivering him, kind of like the scapegoat here. And Yaakov took the beast from the hands of his sons, and he cried out with a loud and weeping voice, holding the beast in his hand. He spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast. Why did you devour my son Yosef? And how did thou have no fear of Elohim of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Yosef? And thou did devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and did thereby render me culpable on his account. Therefore Elohim will require him that is persecuted. This is the part I love. And Yahuwah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Yaakov with its words. And it answered Yaakov and spoke these words unto him. So this is the wolf talk. As Elohim liveth, who created us in the earth, and as thy soul liveth, my Adonai, I did not see thy son, neither did I tear it to pieces. But from a distant land I also came to seek my son, who went forth from me this day, and I know not whether he be living or dead. So this wolf is in the same predicament of Yaakov. He too is, or she, I should say, probably she is missing son. And I came this day into the field to seek my son, and your sons found me, and seized me, and increased my grief, and have this day brought me before thee, and I have now spoken all my words to thee. And now therefore, O son of man, I am in thy hands, and do unto me this day as it may seem good in thy sight. But by the life of Elohim who created me, I did not see thy son, nor did I tear it to pieces. Neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of life. We see, of course, same thing with Balaam's donkey, right? Balaam's donkey also talks. If Yaakov heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished, as I would be as well. Though I would imagine if the dog were to talk, that's exactly what a dog would say. It's really interesting, right? How, oh man, I should have put in here where it talks about the confusion. The first confusion of tongues that happened was between man and animals. The confusion of tongues in Babel was later. And so Elohim removed that's one of the amazing things about animals. You see animals, they talk to each other. I did a video this week about how water communicates, right? How water actually speaks an actual intelligent language. We see that all throughout the Aramaic Targum and other texts. But you see like dogs communicate and birds communicate and all these kind of things. They could hear us. We communicate to them, and they listen to what we say, and they respond to what we say, but they cannot speak to us. And I always found that really fascinating that a dog cannot. They can learn English, they can respond to English, multiple commands, but they can't speak it back. And the only conclusion I can come to is because Elohim really did cause a confusion where they cannot speak. And so the idea that he could open up their mouth and speak their thoughts, I'm like, yeah, I totally could see a world where that could happen. And Yaakov was still crying aloud and weeping for Yosef day after day. He mourned for his son many days. All right. Getting back into the Paleo BARASHAYATH 38, 1 through 30. I don't know how we're doing on time. But all right, let's just keep tracking through this. About this time, Yehuda was sent down from his brothers. So it's really interesting. A lot of people commented about how there's like a break in the story here, and Yosef is being sent into slavery, and why are we coming over to Yehuda? And it appears to be very prophetic. It appears to be the idea of Manasseh and Ephraim on one end and Yehuda on the other. Uh, anyways, it was sent down from his brothers and went stretch himself down before in Adalamaya, whose name was she was a local Canaanite. Her name was Chayaraha. Chayaraha. While there, he is making this committing the same sin that Esau did, and he married local Canaanite women, grieved his parents, and that was the command of Abraham that Yitzchak not marry a Canaanite. Same thing with Yaakov that he not marry a Canaanite, and now we see Yehuda making the mistake. While there, he observed the daughter of a Canaanite whose name was Bath Sha'ui, and he took hold of her and had sexual intercourse with her, and she conceived and bore a son and called his name. So I'm sorry, I confused the woman, but that's the Canaanite right there. Then she conceived again and brought forth a son and called his name Anan. She afterwards increased and brought forth a son, called his name Shalaha. Then she ceased to be childbearing. So, quick update: he had 3 sons with a Canaanite woman. And Yehuda captured a woman for his eldest son, Er. Her name was Thumar, or that's where we get Tamar from. But Er, Yehuda's eldest son, was wicked in the eyes of Yahuwah, the ever living. So Yahuwah destroyed him thoroughly. I love that in Pamela's translation. I assume by destroying him thoroughly that like he was mortally wounded. And what was that line of that Steve Martin said? The Pink Panther. He's like, someone said that he was wounded, and I just messed up his late. But whatever, he's dead. All right, he's dead as a doornail. Yehuda consequently said to his next son, Anan, have intercourse with your brother's woman and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother. We'll be going into this duty here soon. But Anan knew that the offspring would not be his own. Therefore, when he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he ejected on the ground instead of giving seed to his brother. What he did was, however, wicked in the eyes of Yahuwah, the ever-living, and therefore he had him executed. So last time he just destroyed him thoroughly, but this time executed. And then Yehuda said to Tamar, return as a widow unto your father's house until Shalaha, my son, grows up. For he reflected, perhaps he may also kill him like his brothers. Therefore, Tamar went and returned to her father's house. The time went on, and Bath Sha'ui, the woman of Yehuda, died, and Yehuda grieved for her and went up with Chayaraha, his partner, to shear the sheep at Thumanuth. And it was reported to Tamar that her father-in-law was going up to Thumanuth to shear his sheep. So she put off her widow's garments and concealed herself in her veil, and went down and sat at the opening by the wells, which are on the road to Thumanuth. For she saw that Shalaha was grown up; he was not given to her as a husband. Yehuda regarded her, and he thought she was a prostitute. For she, we're going to learn that the reason she is veiled. We saw the same thing happen. Like these veils, I'm telling you. I mean, you got to check these veils, people. Same thing happened to Yaakov when he married a veiled Leah in the dark. So apparently, Yehuda did not lift this veil before he proceeded all the way. She had hidden her face. So he turned from the road to her and said, "Come on, have intercourse with me," for he knew not she was his daughter-in-law. And then she asked, "What will you give to me if I have intercourse with you?" Then he replied, "I will send you a kid of the goats or sheep." And she replied, "What will you give me as a pledge that you will send them?" And he replied, "What is the pledge that I shall give you?" And she answered, "Your signet ring, the twisted thread it hangs upon, and the stick you have in your hand." So he gave her that, and he had intercourse with her, and she conceived to him. Then she arose and went and put the veil from off her and dressed herself in her widow's garments. But Yehuda sent the kid of the goats by the hand of his partner, the Adalamaya, who was to receive the pledge from the hand of the woman. And he could not find her. He therefore inquired of the men of the place, asking, "Where is the kudasha of the wells by the road?" But they replied, "There is no kudasha, separated female." But, so Pamela is telling you that means separate. So he returned to Yehuda and reported, "I cannot find her." And the men of the place said, "There was no separated female there." Yehuda therefore said, "You have taken it to her. Therefore, I cannot be held in contempt by her. For I sent the kid, you could not find her." But 3 months after, it was a report. So he was never able to pay her, but then, of course, he never got his signet ring and his staff back. But 3 months after, it was reported to Yehuda, "Your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has prostituted herself. And she is also a child from her fornication." And Yehuda said, bring her here and burn her." They brought her when she produced the ring and the walking stick, and said, "By the man that these belong to, I am with child." And she continued to, "Who belongs this ring and its motto and this walking stick?" Then Yehuda replied and said, "You are more virtuous than I, for I did not give you Shalah, my son." He therefore proceeded no further to examine her. When, however, the time for her delivery came, there were twins in her midst, and it happened in her childing, one put out his hand. So the midwife took it and tied a scarlet thread upon its hand, remarking, "This came the first." It occurred that he drew back the hand, and his brother was brought forth. Twins, I'll tell you. They do the craziest things. When she said, "What? Have you broken? The breach be upon yourself." Therefore she called his name Pharatz. And afterwards his brother was born. Upon his hand was a scarlet thread, so he called his name Zarak. Right, so there's a lot happening here. So let me give you a little bit of commentary on this. We see here that it says in the Aramaic Targum that she is they ask the question, is she not the daughter of a priest? Let her be brought forth and burned. All right, so that's really important there. I'm going to read this whole section because this is actually really important. And it was at the time of 3 months that she was known to be with child. It was told to Yehuda, saying, "Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, have committed fornication." She's with child by fornication. And Yehuda said, "Is she not the daughter of a priest? Let her be brought forth and burned." So the answer as to why she had to burn, I'm going to go more into this, is already answered because she's the daughter of a priest. If she were not the daughter of a priest, she would be killed in another fashion. And of course, if anyone read back in high school, whenever the Scarlet Letter, that was like a total repeat of this entire scene. I mean, he totally ripped this off. And let's skip down to verse 26. And Yehuda acknowledged and said, "Tamar is innocent," because she produced the signet ring and the staff. "Tamar is innocent. She is with child by me." And the bath coal fell from heaven and said, "From before me is this thing done, and let both be delivered from judgment." Okay, so what I want to focus on is a couple things. The fact that she's the daughter of a priest, also the bath coal. Something maybe next year, if I go through this again, I'll put like a big stress on the actual staff itself and how it appears to be the same staff that later Moshe pulled out of Jethro, the Midian priest, garden. All right. So let's talk first about marrying the brother's wife. So we're going to backtrack a little bit and talk about how each of his children, the sin of his children, refusing to take their brother's wife. This is, of course, a command in Deuteronomy 25. So when we get into the polygyny debate, and people say that it is altogether, it is sin, it's evil, don't ever do it. Well, one of the problems with that is that that's actually a command in the Torah, that there are situations where you are to take an extra wife. There's nothing here about if the guy's single, he could already have a wife, he's supposed to take another wife. Now, this command right here, I need to also stress, is very, very different than we see with typical polygyny, where you're just taking on multiple wives and having children with them. This is a very different situation and a special one. And thank Yah that this no longer applies to me, because my older brother is married and he has sons. And, well, let's just say with my younger brother, because he has no children. Uh, it's up to my older brother to fulfill that duty. Of course, they're not Torah, so I don't have to worry about that either. If a brethren dwell together, okay, so that's the first thing. So it's the idea of you are living under your father's roof. This is of course very typical Mediterranean cultures, right? They have like you go to Italy even this day, and they'll have 3 or 4 levels of a house, and all these different generations live in it, all under the same inheritance, all under the same business. So you're married, your brother's married, you're all living, dwelling together, same land with your father. Father hasn't died, he hasn't separated the inheritance yet. That's really important. And one of them died. One of your brothers died, and he has no children. He's married, but he has no children. The wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. So actually, I guess the command here is that the woman is not is supposed to marry in the family, one of the brothers. Now, there's nothing here that says you have to force that on her. I mean, you're not gonna if she's like running and screaming, it's like okay, fine, just run and scream and go marry someone else. But she's gonna be giving up that whole life that she has, right? She wants to stay in the family, but she has no security now. She has no husband, and she has no inheritance, no son of her own. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. So what's happening here is that the next brother in line is given the explicit duty of raising a son, not for himself, but for his brother. And, just the fact of the matter is, if everyone here, every guy here listening, think about your sister-in-law, right? You all have brothers, and it's like, do you really want to marry her? No, you don't. She doesn't want to marry you either, right? Like this is explicit. This isn't like a pleasure cruise. Like you're going in there to get a child for your brother. It's because you love your brother and you want your brother to have, and you're now losing some of your inheritance that you're getting, right? Because you could be thinking in your mind like, well, my brother's dead. His wife's not getting anything. He's got no child. I'm good. I'm getting more inheritance now. Now you are forsaking some of that extra padding of inheritance and giving it to your dead brother. All right. So you're doing it for like family honor. And it should be that the firstborn which he beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, and that his name be not put out of Israel or Yasharel. So it's saying, look, this doesn't have to be an ongoing thing. You're taking her to wife, you're taking care of her for the rest of her life, for the rest of your life. But you just one child. You don't have to, rabbit crazy here. You don't have to be, in spring and have like 12 children. Just get her a son, all right? I mean, maybe you're gonna get like 7 daughters and the 8th will be a son. I don't know, but it's gotta be a son. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, and think about that, because like that is a very real, like what dude wants to take his brother's wife? That doesn't sound pleasant to me. It doesn't sound, I don't know. It just that is like women might think that that's what men want to do, but most men are be like, "Oh man, my brother's wife, like we don't even get along." Did you see us last Sukkot together? Like that wasn't pleasant. And then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders and say, "My husband's brother refuseth to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother." So now the woman is going to the elders of Israel and saying, this man right here will not perform. Oh man, I love the Bible. And the elders of his city shall call him, speak to him, and if he stand to it and say, "I like not to take her." I always imagine this is like the scene at the end of Mary Poppins where the father goes in and they like rip off the flower, and then they pull off petals and then stuff it back into his jacket, and then take his hat and beat their fist and put it back on his head, that kind of thing. Then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders and loose his shoe from off his foot and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, "So shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house." Really interesting thing with the foot there pulling off his shoe. I've commented on this before. Man, I wish I thought I put scripture to this. With the whole Mary Magdalene thing, some of you are like, "Oh, please don't go into Mary Magdalene again." But when she's washing his feet, so to speak. It was a replay of the Ruth and Boaz scene where she lays down at his feet, and it's the idea that when you're removing the shoe here, like he's refusing to be a provider for her, right? And his name shall be called in Israel the house of him that hath his shoe loosed, because he refused to raise up, perform his duty for his brother. Deuteronomy 25:5-10. All right, so this is what you see with Onan and so on so forth, that the younger brother is refusing to go in, and this, by the way, this is testimony to the fact that the Torah predates Sinai. You can't get around some of this stuff. Like people would say, well, this doesn't apply anymore. It's like, well, it applied before Mount Sinai. This law, right? This what a lot of people call it a bizarre law. This comes from heaven. This is the law of heaven, and his children, his sons, were wicked for not going through with this, like hundreds of years before Sinai. And that's the thing, people they interpret the Onan sin to be various things. Don't need to say what they are, but it's like if you just instead of using your imagination and just come up with these wacky ideas of what he was doing wrong, if you just use the Torah to interpret it, you're like, okay, I see what the sin is, right? Because sin is a transgression of the Torah, not of our imaginations, not of our culture, not of our Catholic guilt. It is a transgression of the Torah specifically. All right. This comes from Matthew 22:23-33. You guys all probably know where I'm going with this. That same day came to him the Sadducees, coming to trick and Messiah, to say that there is no resurrection. Okay, so that's the context right here. And asked him. So the whole idea is they're asking a question based on the whole argument being off. And I think people misinterpret Yahushua's responsiveness very, very important. And they're not taking the context of what he's trying to fix their view. And they're saying, Master, Moshe said, man die having no children, his brother shall marry his wife. We just went through this situation in Deuteronomy. And raise up seed unto his brother. Now there were with us 7 brethren, and the first, when he had married a wife, deceased, and having no issue, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise, the second also, third, all the way into the 7th. And last of all, the women died also, apparently bearing children. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. They're really going to trip them up here, right? What do you think? Yahushua answered and said unto them, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures, not or the power of Allah. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given marriage, but are as the angels of Allah in heaven. Now I here that this is one of the most misinterpreted passages of scripture. Like actually, there's a couple with Messiah. One is the quip about anyone who has looked at a woman lustfully has committed adultery in his heart. I think that is one of the most skewed passages. For example, people take that and their logic is, well, so a man is supposed to never look at a woman sexually, to be sexually aroused, never. And this includes the woman you're engaged to be married. Like you have to pick out a woman, to not ever be aroused by her, not to be sexually attracted to her at all. You don't even think about that because that's adultery. You're committing adultery. And finally, when you say your I do's, then you can look at her and go, I wonder if I'm sexually attracted to her, right? That's the logic where that goes. And it's like the most ridiculous and against nature, the way Allah created humanity to be. And the other way is that the idea is that once you're finally married to that woman, now you cannot be attracted to any other women because now that's adultery. And it's like, no, that's not what he's saying. Because the very fact that you're attracted to your wife tells you that you are attracted to women, okay, and there are features of your wife that you find very womanly and very attractive, and that's a huge compliment. Like if you're attracted to other women, that's actually a huge compliment to your wife. Maybe women might think of it differently, but it is. Because it's like, in this age where we all have pronouns, it's like I need to come up with some pronoun for the people who say that about Yahusha. They're like they're their sexual orientation that they're only attracted to their wife and no, they're only sexually attracted to their wife and no other women whatsoever. But anyways, this is another one. And what he's specifically saying here, for in the resurrection, they neither marry or nor are given in marriage. Okay, so he says nothing here, nothing at all about the people who are already married. Okay, keep that in mind. He doesn't say that, and that's where people take this and they run with it and they go, "Oh, there's no more marriage in heaven. We're all done." It's like he doesn't say it. He says that there will not be given in marriage. Yes, you're not going to be in heaven checking out the babes and go out and marry her. Like that is what he's saying. All right. But are as the angels of Allah have heaven. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, have you not read spoken unto you by Allah? I'm saying I am the Allah of Abraham, and the Allah of Yitzchak, and the Allah of Yaakov. Allah is not the Allah of the dead, but of the living. Right. So he is tweaking the view and saying that they're they never really died in the way that they're thinking, right? That they continue flipping on, right? And so let's go into Book of the Nazarene, where it addresses the same thing. And this is where it gets really interesting, because now we have a situation and be like, well, wait a second, they have a good point. If a woman marries 7 dudes and marriage begins on this earth and continues into the afterlife, then is she married to those 7 dudes? Yeah, that doesn't make sense, right? Well, this is where it gets answered. The woman, now this is the woman at the well in this story here in the books of the Nazarene. The woman said to Yahusha, "Let me have this water you talked about, so I am freed from the necessity for drawing water." You guys all know the story. Yahusha said, "It would be best if you went and brought your husband, for 2 may understand better than 1." And she answered, "But I have no husband." And Yahusha said, "In this you have at any rate spoken true. For though married 5 times, you now live with one who is not your husband." Now I'm taking the context here. People have made much of this, but I think that it was one of those things where she was passed down through the brothers. Maybe the last brother died. Maybe she had no more protector. Now she's with someone who's not her husband. All right. So now we got a problem. The one who had remained with Yahusha said, "Master, I am puzzled. This woman had many husbands. Tell us which one will be her husband in heaven." Now notice how they're rephrasing it, because they're not the Sadducees. They believe in the resurrection, his Talmud. So they're phrasing this question in a very different context. He doesn't shoot it down and say, "Oh, you don't understand that marriage ends at death." He doesn't say that. Yahusha said, "In heaven there is neither marriage nor giving in marriage." We know that. "For there the promise of marriage are fulfilled." So what does that mean? To one of the 5 she was married to, probably the brothers, to one she must incline more than towards the others. And if he inclines likewise, there is the union of ruachoth, or ruach. You've heard me talk about this a lot, the marriage of ruachoth. But union to the ruach may be either weak or strong. Another Talmudim said, "What if he who is not her husband?" And Yahusha answered him, "Marriage is not of the flesh, nor made by the words of men. It is of the ruach, and they who are joined in ruach and flesh in the sight of Yahuwah, or Yahuwah, let no man seek to lightly put apart. A marriage wholly of flesh is fornication, though it be blessed by many priests." All right. I don't know about you, but that was mind blowing for me. And so think about this, like thinking like a pre-existence argument. Okay. Remember when Cain killed Abel, and Yahuwah comes and he's like, he gives a response, and when you dig into the language, it's translated like, "Many voices have gone silent." I was expecting many generations. It's not just Abel you murdered, it's the seed of Abel. All the generations of men that were expected to come of him, they're gone now. So what am I trying to do. And so the idea of a woman going, I love my husband. I was attached to him. Our ruach was attached to God. I love him so much. I want a son with him. So, brother, younger brother, you're up. It's your duty now. I want you to give me a son from my husband. That child will be accredited to my husband. And we get into this whole pre-existence theme of how these children are assigned. It's really interesting how it works, and how that child really is like was intended to be the husband's. And so when she's going through these different men, it's because of the bond she had with. So that's the answer to the question. Who's like, look, which one is she most attached to? And if he inclines as well, that is the binding of the ruach in eternity. All right, now going into adultery. The seriousness of adultery. Now, some people may say I'm taking this out of context in terms of adultery. The fact is that adultery is a very serious capital punishment. And not only that, I could pull out other passages where it seems to be eternal punishment. Like adultery is so serious, you commit the deed, you're cut off. I don't want to see that to scare anybody. If anyone is out there and you have committed adultery, and if you have already worked this out with Yahuwah, if you've already taken this to him and you've cleansed your heart and so on and so forth, I don't want to, open a can of worms, open up an old wound. All right. But if there is, this is more like a word of warning for anyone out there who is not going to guard these commands. Adultery is very, very, very serious. Like, even though we don't live in a Torah community where you can go commit adultery, no one's going to stone you for it. The stoning of physical people is, on earth as it is in heaven. It's a sign of eternity. All right. This is how Allah Hayam feels about adultery. Like, even if you evade it in this life, you're going to get it in the next. But if this thing be true and the tokens of virginity be not found for the damsel, so the husband is realizing, like, wait a second, in this case, she was not who she said she was, has been with another man, perhaps while they were betrothed, which is the same thing as adultery. Then they shall bring out the damsel to the doors of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones that she die. I mean, I can't imagine having to do that, having to stone someone. But I can tell you right now, if I witnessed something like that, or if I were forced to take part in something like that, I would hope that would put this fear of Allah on me, the fear of Yah. Like, I don't ever want to do something like that, or or hopefully nobody else as well, because she hath wrought folly in Yasharel to play a whore in her father's house. So shalt thou put evil away from among you. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die. All right. So the man too, it's up to him to die too. Both the man that lay with the woman and the woman, so shalt thou put away evil from Yasharel. If a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto a husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then ye shall bring them both out into the gate of that city, and ye shall stone them with stones and they die. All right. So this is really serious. Right now, why was Tamar not stoned to death? Well, because it says so right here in Leviticus 21:9, the daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by playing the harlot, she profanes her father, she shall be burned with fire. So that's really interesting right there. So we see the Torah being played out before the Torah was given. And the locals here, they all knew the law of heaven. They're like, yeah, we're not going to stone her, we're going to burn her with fire, right? Now, of course, she was spared because she was really, I mean, they were probably like, dude, Yehuda, you're gross, you're really messed up. But yeah, she's under your care, so whatever happens in your TP, I guess, whatever. But so they were both spared. And we see here, Aramaic Targum, and Yehuda took a woman for his firstborn, a daughter of Shem the Great, whose name was Tamar. Now, I don't believe that she was actually a daughter, and in fact, you see this many times in the language. Like they'll say, he's the son of Nimrod. He's so on and so forth. It could mean the son, right? It's not necessarily like, I don't know if they had words back then for like language for like great granddaughter or whatever. But then we see here in Jasher 45:23, and in those days Yehuda went to the house of Shem and took Tamar, the daughter of Elam, the son of Shem. So now we see more clarification in Jasher that she's actually the granddaughter of Shem for a wife for his firstborn heir. Now, of course, Shem was a priest. He was a Melchizedek priest, and I'm assuming that Elam was as well. He was also a Melchizedek priest. And so she was the daughter of the priest, which is why she had to be burned. All right. Well, with oh wow, look, I don't know if you guys can see where I'm scrolling. I'm only halfway done with this tonight. So let's see what we can get accomplished. Hope you guys enjoy this. I'm enjoying going through this. We're going to read from the testimony of Yehuda. And because this actually really gives more details on the whole situation. And after these things, my son, Er, took to wife Tamar from Mesopotamia, daughter of Aram. It's interesting. It says from Mesopotamia, daughter of Aram. Now, Er was wicked, and he was in need concerning Tamar because she was not of the land of Canaan. And on the so basically, so this is where Yehuda is like, he's really trying to, because remember now, he originally married a Canaanite woman. He's trying to correct this now too. He's got Canaanite sons through him, and he's like, okay, look, I took a mother that I shouldn't have, but I want to correct this. I want to get the right woman for you. But now the situation is flipped because now his wicked sons are like, well, she's not one of us. You might have done that with our mom, but she's not one of us. We don't want her. And on the third night, an angel of Yahuwah spoke to him, and he had not known her according to the evil craftiness of his mother. So we see the mother coming in, and she's the one advising her sons what not to do, for he did not wish to have children by her. So Yehuda's own wife is like going behind his back and going like, let's spill your seed. Have fun with her, but don't penetrate. In the days of the wedding feast, I gave Onan to her in marriage, and he also in wickedness knew her not, though he spent with her a year. And when I threatened him, he went in unto her, but he spilled the seed on the ground according to the command of his mother, and also died through wickedness. So you see, just completely, they're wicked because they are disobeying the Torah, the clear command. And I wished to give Shelah also to her, but his mother did not permit it, for she wrought evil against Tamar, because she was not the daughter of Canaan, as she also herself was. And I knew that it's sad because this wife of Yehuda doesn't get it. Like her seed is not going to inherit this land. And I knew that the race of the Canaanites was wicked. The impulse of youth blinded my mind. And when I saw her pouring out wine, owing to the intoxication of wine, I was deceived and took her, although my father had not counseled it. So he's grieving his father now. And while I was away, she went and took for Shelah a wife from Canaan. And when I knew what she had done, I cursed her in the anguish of my soul, and she also died through her wickedness together with her sons. So, I mean, we know she's wicked because of her counsel. I'm not getting a clear picture of through her wickedness together with her sons, what that looked like. But it's probably an ugly picture. And after these things, while Tamar was a widow, she heard after 2 years that I was going up to shear my sheep, and adorned herself in bridal array, and sat in the city in name by the gate. All right. Well, this is kind of messed up. Why is she dressed up as a bride? Well, for it was a law of the Amorites that she who was about to marry should sit in fornication 7 days by the gate. Well, that's lovely. That's a nice way to. Oh man. Marry a woman that you love after all the men have had their way with her. Therefore, being drunk with wine, I did not recognize her, and her beauty deceived me, though the fashion of her adorning. So there you go. He was drunk with wine. This is one of his problems. He goes on, for lack of time, I'm running out of time. His whole complication with his first wife was over wine and being drunk. And we've learned that after this incident, for the following, I think, 20 years, up until the time that he is reunited with Yosef in Mitzrayim, he does not drink again. He gives up the drink because of his lifestyle. This is great here. And now, chapter 3 of the same book. And now I command you, my children, hearken to Yehuda your father, and keep my sayings to perform all the ordinances of Yahweh and to obey the commands of Elohim. People can't argue that it's taken out of context because it's clearly this whole story is you can only have the ordinances of Yahweh in some way or shape, even if it wasn't in writing at Mount Sinai yet. All right, let's skip this for lack of time. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the bat coal. And remember, I read in the Aramaic Targum. I don't know if I need to scroll up here for you guys again and just show that. Let's see here. Let's find it. Here it is. Nope, that's not it. Here it is. So Tamar is about to be burned, and the bath coal or the bat coal fell from heaven. Okay, I'm telling you right now, it's a dove. All right, dove comes down from heaven, and this dove, this voice, the bath coal is it's actually a voice. It's a voice from heaven, and it's a feminine voice. It's a lady's voice. Said, "From before me was this thing done." All right, and let both be delivered from judgment. So basically, the bath coal, a feminine voice, is saying, "I'm the matchmaker. I set this up." We saw the same thing happen with the Ruach HaKodesh with Rivka when she brought Yaakov in. She overheard Yitzhak talking with Esau, and she brought her son in to deceive Yitzhak. All right. Getting back to where we were. The bat coal. The rabbis speak of the bat coal, which means daughter of a voice. You guys have heard me cover this before, but it's always good to go over this really quickly. It is generally manifested as delivering a divine message proclaiming Elohim's will or judgments. It is sometimes described as an echo. Let's see. Okay, good. And we see here the bat coal is sometimes envisaged as a dove. So what do you think is happening in the Gospels when we have a dove coming down with a voice from heaven, right? It is by Hebrew tradition, rabbinical tradition, it is the bat coal. We see here, now this is, I'm quoting from the Talmud tonight. Some of you are like, what kind of Bible study is this? But Rabbi Elazar said, when the Jewish people accorded precedence to the declaration we will do over we will hear, a divine voice, he actually says, emerged and said to them, who revealed to my children the secret that the ministering angels use? So this is actually the context is at Mount Sinai, and this divine voice says, my children. It's a feminine voice, right? So now we're dealing with the mother of Yasharel. Don't worry, I'm not going to do a whole study on this tonight. But I do love this from the Lost Gospel of the Hebrews. We see, and it came to pass when Adonai was come up out of the water, the whole fount of the Ruach HaKodesh descended upon him and rested on him. Now, it doesn't say dove here. I think it says in Luke that it's a dove. But that's the back coal, and it said, my son. So now we've got the Ruach HaKodesh saying, my son. So you've got some, got some very early Hebrew Christians totally digging this. My son, and all the prophets was I waiting for thee, that thou should come, and I might rest in thee. For thou art my rest, thou art my first begotten son that reigns forever. I have heard so many people argue over, what does it mean for Yahusha to be the only begotten, the first begotten, all these kind of things. But when you understand, when you bring in the feminine Ruach HaKodesh, the mother of Yasharel to this, you're like, oh, okay, it starts to make sense now. Even so did my mother, this again is from the Lost Gospel of the Hebrews, even so did my mother, the Ruach HaKodesh, take me by one of my hairs and carry me away on to the great mountain of Tabor. That is where he is transfigured with the Holy Spirit. This is fun. This is a, let's see here. Yeah, I'll skip this. This is from the Odes of Solomon. And you guys know, I talked about this 2 or 3 years ago. I haven't talked about it much recently, but you see the Ruach HaKodesh speaking, and she says, however, the perfect virgin stood, who was preaching and summoning and saying, O you sons of men, return, and you, their daughters, come and leave the ways of that corrupter and approach me. She's talking about the Antichrist. Right? She's talking about this corrupter who comes and was destroying everything. It said that this corrupter, it said, then he drew to him all those who obeyed him, for he did not appear as the evil one. It's really interesting. Um, and he says, and they who have put me on shall not be falsely accused, but they shall possess incorruption in the new world. And there was another line in there. Oh, yeah, and leave the ways of the corrupter and approach me. So it seems like we see something similar here too in Revelation. I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people," right? That ye be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. You guys know probably my view that I believe this is the Ruach HaKodesh speaking to her children. And so we see here, and they who have put me on, this is the perfect virgin speaking, shall not be falsely accused, but they shall possess incorruption in the new world. Well, what does it mean to put on the Ruach HaKodesh? It's the purple robes that Adam and Eve were dressed in. They were divested in the purple robe in which they had been created. And of course, what's crazy about that is that this is the same purple colored uh, light that Yahushua HaMashiach was ultraviolet light. Purple light is something you can't see with the naked eye. I mean, it's like the highest ultraviolet light that Yahushua HaMashiach, when he entered Sheol, he was in this radiant purple light, right? That's the light of the resurrection right there. That's what we're dressed in, the Ruach HaKodesh. And we see here in Sirach, and in the midst of the church, she shall open his mouth and shall, so she, right, and shall find him with the Ruach of wisdom and understanding, and shall clothe him with a robe of glory. All right. So it's the Ruach HaKodesh that clothes us, mother of Yeshua. Let's continue reading. Wow, it is 9:50. Let's see what I can get through tonight. Paleo BARASHAYATH 39, 1 through 23. Thus Yosef had been taken down to Mitzrayim and was sold to Potiphar, Pharaoh's general commander of the guards, a Egyptian, Matzariah, from the hands of the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. But Yahweh, the ever-living, was with Yosef, and he became a prosperous man and was steward to his master, the Mitzrayim. For his master saw that Yahweh, the ever-living, was with him, and that all he did, Yahweh prospered it in his hand. Yosef therefore found favor in his eyes, for he was honest towards him. Consequently, he appointed him chief of his house and entrusted all his possessions to his control, with the result that from when he was appointed over the house and over all that belonged to him, Yahweh, the ever-living, did Barak, bless the house of the Matzariah of Mitzrayim under the administration of Yosef. He was baraked by Yahweh, the ever-living, and all his possessions, in the house and in the field, so that all he had increased under the direction of Yosef. Consequently, he made no inquiry what he had except for the bread which he ate. Yosef was also handsome in form and handsome in face. It happened, however, after these events, that the woman of his Adon lifted up her eyes to Yosef and said, "Lie down with me." But he refused and said to his master's woman, "My Adon knows not what is in his house, and all he possesses he has placed in my control. There is no one greater than I in this house, and he has withheld nothing from me, except yourself, because you are his woman. Therefore, I will not commit that great sin and outrage against Allah." So we see a contrast here between the story with Yehuda and their sexual problems, and the fact that Yosef is put under the he's grilled here. He's put to the test, and he passes it phenomenally. However, she solicited Yosef day after day, but he would not listen to her to lie down beside her or be with her. But it happened that one day when he came to her apartment with a message for her, and there were none of the attendants of the house there in the apartment, that she seized him by his wrapper, saying, "Lie down with me." But he let his wrapper slip off in her hand and fled away naked. So when she saw that he had left his wrapper in her hand and had fled naked, she called out to the attendants of her house and said to them, "Behold, he has brought this a barayah to us to insult us. He came to me to violate me." But I shrieked. Then he left his wrapper beside me and fled naked. So it's kind of interesting how she's like playing the Torah here too, right? So remember when you're in a city, a man comes to rape you, what do? You scream him out. So she's like, she's making out like she's being the righteous one, right? She also laid by the wrapper with her until her Adon came home. She spoke to him about all his matter, saying, "There came to me the a Barashayah slave, whom you brought to us to insult. But when I raised my voice to call out, he abandoned his wrapper near me and fled away naked. When his Adon heard the tale of his woman, she told him, asserting, 'Your servant acted according to my statement, that his nostrils flared, his anger burned. Therefore, Yosef's Adon took him and put him to the tower house, the prison, the place where the prisoners of the king were imprisoned, and he was confined in the tower house. The Yahuwah, the ever living, was with Yosef and stretched out over him chesed favor, and gifted him with gracefulness in the eyes of the commander of the tower house, placed in Joseph's hands the whole of the prisoners in the tower house, and all that was done there. He all right. There's so much I want to get to tonight, and I'm just going to go a little bit over tonight. So, you know, uh, thanks for hanging in there, everyone who's still with me this long. I really want to read from the Testament of Joseph because it covers this story. Jasher is crazy too, but this really covers this in a beautiful light. I mean, I love the Testament of Joseph. The copy of the Testament of Joseph. When he was about to die, he called his son, his brother together, and said to them, "My brethren and my children, to Joseph, the beloved of Yasharel, give each myself to your father. I have seen it, I live envy and death, yet I went not astray, but preserved in the truth of Yahweh." That's what you want to see on your deathbed, right? You want to call your children and be like, "Man, I, this life is a test. I want to tell you guys, I passed, I overcame it. I overcame the temptation. I lived a life. I shunned sin, and I was obedient to my These my brethren hated me, but Yahweh loved me. They wished to slay me, his brothers, but the Elohim of my fathers guarded me. They let me down into a pit, and the Most High brought me up again. I was sold into slavery, and Yahweh of all made me free. I was taken into captivity, and his strong hand secured me. I was beset with hunger. Yahweh himself nourished me. I was alone, and Elohim comforted me. I was sick, and Yahweh visited me. I was in prison, and my Elohim showed favor to me. You can see just like the heart of Mashiach, right? It bonds, and he released me. Slandered and pleaded my cause, bitterly spoken against by the midstreams and delivered me. Envied by my fellow slaves, and he exalted me. This chief captain of Pharaoh entrusted to me his house, and I struggled against a shameless woman, urging me to transgress with her. But the Elohim of Yasharel, my father, delivered me from the burning flame. Uh, Burning flame, I think, in this instance is the the consequence. Now, keep in mind, she is the wife of a priest. All right, so the burning flame, right? This should have been, if he was guilty of that, she and possibly he, at least eternally, would be thrown into the flame. I was cast into prison. I was beaten. I was mocked, but Yahweh granted me to find mercy in the sight of the keeper of the prison. For Yahweh doth not forsake them that fear him, neither in darkness, nor in bonds, nor in tribulations, nor in necessities. For Elohim is not put to shame as a man, nor as the son of man is he afraid, nor as one that is earthborn is he weak or affrighted. But in all those things doth he give protection, and in diverse ways doth he comfort, though for a little space he departeth to try the inclination of the soul. In 10 temptations he showed me approved. And I would imagine if I were to analyze this book more, we'd go through the 10 temptations. Let's just go to the next verse. How often did the Egyptian women threaten me with death? Or I should say the woman. I'm sorry, not women, the woman. How often did she give me over to punishment and then call me back and threaten me? And when I was unwilling to company with her, she said to me, "Thou shalt be added of me, and all that is in my house, if thou wilt give thyself to me, and thou shalt be as our master." But I remembered the words of my father, and going into my chamber, I wept and prayed to Yahweh. And I fasted in those 7 years. So that's incredible that, like, he's tempted, he starts weeping. He's tempted, he starts fasting. Incredible character. And I appear to the Mitzrayim as one living delicately, for they that fast for Elohim's sake receive beauty of face. So isn't that interesting too that He's talking about his beautiful face. So this beautiful complexion he had, according to Yosef, is playing out by how he lives a righteous life. Interesting. So it's not just a physicality. So all these people are seeing this beauty he has. They want it for themselves, but they don't want righteousness. That's the ongoing thing we see in Scripture. We see with Nimrod, Esau, Nimrod, all that kind of stuff. They want this inheritance. They want this beautiful inheritance, but they don't want to live the righteous life. And if my Ad and I were away from home, I drank no wine. That's total contrast to Yehuda, who did drink wine and make some mistakes doing it. Nor for 3 days did I take my food, but I gave it to the poor and sick. So he had these rations, giving it to the poor and sick. And I sought Yahuwah early, and I went for the Egyptian woman of Memphis, for very unceasingly did she trouble me. For also at night she came to me under pretense of visiting me, and because she had no male child, she pretended to regard me as a son. So that's the false pretense. She's like, I'll be your mother, right? I'll just want to spend time with you, cuddle up on the couch. And for a time she embraced me as a son, and I knew it not. But later she sought to draw me into fornication. When I perceived it, I sorrowed unto death. When she had gone out, I came to myself and lamented for many days, because I recognized her guile and her deceits. And I declared unto her the words of the Most High, if haply she would from her evil lust. Often, therefore, did she flatter me with words as a holy man, and guilefully in her. So she's acting spiritual, right? She's pretending like, she's a heavenly woman, and guilefully in her talk praise my chastity before her husband, while desiring to ensnare me when we were alone. And that's really interesting there too. That it's kind of like she's things we talk about, are often to cover our true intent. I don't have time to go into that, give some examples, but it's like you see that it's the opposite, right? Her mind is sexually on him, and so she's publicly praising his chastity when really, that's what she wants herself. Uh, for she lauded me openly as chaste, and in secret she said unto me, fear not, my husband, for he is persuaded concerning thy chastity, for even should one tell him concerning us, he would not believe. Owing to all these things, I lay upon the ground and besought Elohim that Yahuwah would deliver me from her deceits. I caught this earlier today. There's another reference right there. He is praying to Allah Hayam that Yahuwah deliver him. So right there we see a clear distinction between the Father, Allah Hayam, and the Son, Yahuwah. When she had prevailed nothing thereby, she came again to me at the plea of instruction, that she might look at the word of Allah Hayam. So now she wants to learn the Torah. That's what she says, right? Right? She's beguiling him with this heavenly talk, priestly talk. And she said unto me, if thou willest that I should leave my idols, lie with me. And I will persuade my husband to depart from his idols, and we will walk in the Torah of Adonai. And I said unto her, Yahuwah willeth not that those who reverence him should be in uncleanness, nor doth he take pleasure in them that commit adultery, but in those that approach him with a pure heart and undefiled lips. But she heed her peace, longing to accomplish her evil desire. And I gave myself yet more to fasting and prayer, that Yahuwah might deliver me from her. And again, at another time, she said unto me, if thou wilt not commit adultery, I will kill my husband by poison, and take thee to be my husband. Well, I guess she gave up the learning the Torah, right? I guess we're past that now. She's like, all right, like none of that was legit. But I'll totally kill my husband for you. That's I actually believe that. Like that was legitimate there. I therefore, when I heard this, my garments, and said unto her, woman, reverence Allah and do not this evil deed, lest thou be destroyed. For know indeed that I will declare this thy device unto all men. She therefore, being afraid, besought that I would not declare this device. And she departed, soothing me with gifts and sending to me every delight of the sons of men. All right. This goes on and on and on. I could read this all night for lack of time. I'm obviously not going to finish it. This just, yeah. He had it rough, guys. He had it rough there with a woman that basically is, it just keeps going on. This woman is like, he's describing him like she's exposing herself. I mean, like she's throwing her clothes off for him. He says she exposes her arms and her legs, which, today is like, but he says that she would expose her breast to him too. She's showing him everything, and he's trying to look away, do his duties. I mean, he's got it. Um, and then I also have here. Okay, so maybe I'll end on this note tonight from the Book of Wisdom. And we went through the study a couple months ago, and this is directed at women, but here you totally see it reversed with Yosef. But this is the same. What is expected of women, even though men and women are different, the same thing is expected of men. Right? So it says, if a woman is beautiful and gifted beyond other women, which Yosef was. Uh, okay, let me look at this here. I highlighted this. So Yosef is so beautiful. He's so good looking. It says, all the women of Egypt came to visit Potiphar's wife, and they said unto her, why art thou in this declining state? Because she's getting so sick. I mean, they're like really worried. And her name is Zelika. And she answered them, this day it shall be made known to you whence this springs in which you see me. And she commanded her maidservants to prepare food for all the women. And she made a banquet. All the women ate at them. And she gave them knives to peel, the citrons to eat them. And she commanded that they should dress in costly garments, and they should appear before them. And Yosef came before their eyes, and all the women looked on Yosef and could not take their eyes from off him. And they all cut their hands with the knives. They're all looking at Yosef. They cut their hands with knives that they had in their hands, and all the citrons that were in their hands were filled with blood. Right? So these women, like, he walks in, and they're just like, what? And they're still cutting, and they're just cutting up their hands. Like, this is what Yosef had to deal with. All right. So when you're this, for any viewer out there, when you're this good looking, what is some good advice? How do you deal with your good looks? And this goes to both women and men. If a woman is beautiful, beyond other women, you can say the same thing. If a man is so handsome, he's gifted beyond all other men, then she has been favored by the divine and entrusted with life's greatest treasures. Therefore, she should not conduct herself as other women, for many men will seek her after her, and she must be discriminating. Her influence on men can be greater than that of other women, so she must always be conscious of its effect. So that's what Yosef was, right? He understood that his influence was greater on women than other men. And so does it make better men, and does it serve the cause of good? The attitude of gifted and beautiful women is of prime interest to those who concern themselves with the spiritual uplifting and advancement of mankind. That's what Yosef was, right? He was all about the spiritual uplifting and advancement of mankind. He wanted to teach her the Torah. She's like, here, teach me the Torah and I'll sleep with you. And he's like, okay, I'll teach you the Torah. Doesn't want me to commit fornication, adultery, or be unclean. So right there, like, let's learn the Torah. She's like, no, I just killed my husband instead. Unlike the religions that will die, the good religion cannot ignore this aspect. A beautiful woman, if she be good, is proud of being the guardian of such treasure and safeguards it from polluting hands. Right? So she really guards, she's not like, undressing for Yosef, right? She dedicates it to the service of good, which also means the service of mankind. She uses it as a spur and incentive to the upward struggle of man towards divinity. She is more modest and reserved than other women. And of course, the same thing with Yosef. It said he would never look at women. He would look away from them. Like it was all about for him. It would fit this paragraph perfectly. And as this increases her desirability even more, because she is so modest, meaning the more modest you are, the more the opposite sex wants you. That was the same Yosef had. Like, the more he refused her, the more she wanted him. I think if like he had done the deed right away, she would have just, disposed whatever, like this guy. Like he's not as valuable, right? She is absolutely discreet and prudent in all her activities. Her devotion to the cause of good need entail no more than the maintenance of strict female standards of decency in the face of overwhelming temptation and being a good wife and mother. All right. I'm going to end it there tonight. There is a little bit more. Well, there's tons of more passages I have. Obviously, I can't get through them all. I hope you guys enjoyed what I did read through. I hope I was able to expound on the story a little bit more. I'm going to say this for next week because I'll just add this a little bit extra next week. All right, adding more to it because we get into the butler and all that and the dreams, and we'll go from there. So, with that, I'm at my mark. Just went over my mark. Thank you, everybody, for coming here and uh, making this a part of your Sabbath celebration. I hope you guys get great rest. Hopefully, we all worked hard this week. Man, you worked 6 days, rest the seventh, right? So, enjoy your rest. Spend time with your family, with your wife, your children. Spend time with Allah Hayam, and be grateful for Yahuwah and all He's done for us. And good night, everybody. We'll do this next week. Shalom. Shabbat shalom one last time.